Hey pilots, let's talk about items and internals. There are a lot of different loadouts in Hawken. And as I was working on my guide for this, which should have contained recommendations for the optimal loadouts for each mech, I came to the conclusion that there actually is no such thing. There are just too many possibilities. And sure, some combinations are better than others, but they all promote different playstyles, and this is exactly why there is no such thing as a best configuration for any mech. So I decided that I will simply talk about my own mechs, and why I chose the respective loadouts. So to speak, welcome to a tour through Berg's garage. Yeah, as you can see, I have all the slots filled on all of my mechs, and so should you. If you aren't out of HC, there is absolutely no reason to leave any free space here. Even though you can't rely on them to win you the match, every single internal and item gives you an advantage if you know how to utilize them. Now, note that every item comes in MK1, MK2 and MK3 variants, meaning for 1, 2 or 3 uses per spawn respectively. The only exception is the item regenerator, which can rather be understood as an internal instead of an item placed into the item area, as it is not deployable but passively cuts down the cooldown between item uses to 5 seconds instead of the regular 7 seconds. You will have to decide for yourself whether you find it worth sacrificing one slot for quicker use of the remaining items. Internals, on the other hand, come in basic, regular and advanced variants, taking up between 1 and 3 of your 6 internal slots. The idea here is, of course, that more powerful internals take up more space in your loadout. Now, let's start off with the Assault. The Assault is the default mech for every new player, and so that's the best starting point, I guess. On my Assault, I run 3 repair charges and 1 EMP. The EMP I use mostly for neutralizing shields and as an emergency measure when I'm low on health and somebody's rushing me. The repair charges are pretty self-explanatory. Push the button and produce a health regenerating orb your mech absorbs. And since the Assault is like the Terminator of Hawken, keeping up the fight longer than any other mech because of its cooldown ability, this fits perfectly well. I guess it's safe to say that apart from scanners maybe, the repair charge is the most useful item in the entire game, bordering overpowered. I think that there's just no reason not to use them since they're so versatile. You can shorten your repair time with it, you can deploy them near teammates for them to absorb and even stay within its range during engagements, regaining health while firing. Yeah. Now, when equipping the extractor and or repair kit internal, you can increase the speed at which you regenerate health from these orbs up to the point where you regain health quicker than a single mech can drain it in a one-on-one situation, which is why this is called orb lording and highly frowned upon by a lot of players, since all the orb lord in that situation has to do is stand on the orb and fire, while his opponent will inevitably lose the fight, no matter how skillful his dodges are, or how accurate his aim, for that matter. In official Hawken contests, like the TPG League and the Priority Target tournaments, these internals are straight out banned, along with the scanner item, which as well gives you too much of an advantage for it to still be balanced. Now, as a member of the Cobalt Defense Regiment, I have agreed to avoid the scanner and orb lord tactic on the large and focus on alternatives instead. Still, regenerating health is a very powerful feat, and while not as effective as the extractor and repair kit internals, The advanced armor fuser also does a very good job at that. The deflectors, on the other hand, reduce incoming damage while boosting and dodging, and the basic fuel converter replenishes my tank whenever I take damage, which is when boosting and dodging is vital. And since boosting and dodging is exactly what you should do in Hawken, you will find these on a lot of my mechs. There are of course a lot more possibilities for the assault, but I have found this one suiting my assault play just fine, and I see no need for any alternatives builds. But as you already may have noticed, I have several instances of some mechs. That's because these mechs offer a bit more variance in how much you can change your playstyle by changing your primary weapon. Let's take my scouts for example. The item loadout should be familiar, only with more EMPs, because EMPs on the scout are awesome. I use this mostly with the heat cannon primary, which means I will engage enemies from all ranges and force corner play situations wherever possible. That's where repair charges come in handy, as I can place them in a spot where I will dodge behind cover repeatedly after shooting a volley of both weapons at the enemy, regaining health quickly, which I lost while I was out in the open. Internal wise, I have the air compressor equipped on both of my scouts, simply because air dodging is dodging too, and that's what the scout excels at. I would even go as far as saying that the air compressor can be recommended for every A-class mech, because they rely on being difficult to hit, and the ability to air dodge contributes to that. Now, when I'm really close to my enemy, this failsafe internal reduces self-damage I take from my heat cannon and tow rockets explosions by 40%. That's a lot. And pretty much a lifesaver. And lastly, the basic reconstructor slowly regenerates health when I'm out of combat for 10 seconds, which means not dealing damage and not taking damage. On my second scout, however, I have the flak cannon equipped, which is a shotgun type weapon and deals no splash damage, meaning I cannot hurt myself with it. This is the reason why I swapped out the failsafe for deflectors, which are almost mandatory on flak scouts, because with this weapon you really want to get into your enemies' faces and up their butts all the time. Now that means you will get shot eventually, and since a scout that isn't boosting is practically a dead scout, the basic fuel converter makes a return on this mech, so that I at least benefit from the damage I take in some way. I got rid of the EMP and threw in shields on this one, because the flak scout is extremely well suited for shield dueling. Now the EMP and the shield are kind of like two sides of the same coin. The shield is very powerful in itself, as it provides you with an instant cover and there is absolutely no downside to it, which often is a literal lifesaver, especially for A-class burst mechs. The EMP on its own can be a bit difficult to use and can thus be considered inferior to the shield item in a way, since new players in particular tend to have trouble landing these strange Beyblade things, and when they're close enough to make it a guaranteed hit, they will most likely EMP themselves as well. However, if your enemy hides in a shield, he just turned himself into a massive EMP hitbox. And throwing an EMP on a shield does not only neutralize the shield itself, but also shuts down the weapons of everyone inside, basically turning the advantage that the shield provided into an utter death trap. And this is where the mind games start in Hawken, right? Like, does my enemy have EMPs equipped or not? Do I risk using a shield now and just bet that he doesn't? Or if I think that he has one, do I refrain from deploying a shield, denying myself the protection to potentially not do him the favor of EMPing me in an easy way? Well, there's only one way to find out, right? Alright, let's have a look at the infiltrators. As you can see, I own a truckload of them, which is completely unnecessary, but it's my favorite mech and I like toying around with different builds. Now this one is my standard build. I use it with all of the primary weapons, although mostly with the EOC repeater. As you can see, there is no repair charge equipped on this one, and that is due to the fact that I rely on the advanced reconstructor internal to heal me after I escaped a dangerous situation. Same as the basic version, it kicks in after 10 seconds of not shooting and not getting shot, but this one here heals you at a much higher rate, meaning that my health will be fully restored within a matter of seconds. If an Alpha Strike fails to kill the target instantly and I have to kill it off in actual combat, the air compressor is a bit of a blessing, really, because the EOC pucks are a lot easier to land from above, and even though the Infiltrator has decent airspeed, not dodging tends to be a bit of a death sentence for A-class mechs anyway. Speaking of Alpha Strikes, in the item section you can see 2 detonators for exactly that. For those of you who don't know, Alpha Striking somebody means to unleash all available firepower at once and then retreat, leaving the enemy either destroyed or severely damaged. Now the Infiltrator mech is perfectly suited for this kind of tactic by sneaking up to opponents with the ability activated, or use it to make an invisible escape. For the unlucky times when this escape doesn't really work out, or I want to kill someone repairing inside a shield, or if I want to assassinate a bigger mech that I cannot possibly kill in one go, there's EMPs. I even made a build that is focused entirely on assassinations, especially the ones where you have to get really close. One issue with the previous loadout was that after I snuck up on, let's say, a technician, which is very difficult to hit with a full volley from a safe distance, even if I managed to kill it in one go, I was often left very low on health and out of fuel, since the ability drains it. So basically an easy target for anyone just casually pointing their crosshair at me. Now this Infiltrator is perfect for this exact situation, since the failsafe minimizes the self-damage, ideal to myself, and the basic fuel converter even fills up my tank the moment I shoot, which is also the moment when my cloak breaks and the fuel isn't being drained anymore. And this is how you figure out what loadout you need for your mech. Just think about what you actually do the most with this mech and then prepare for that with items and internals. Now here's what a full Orb Lord build looks like in any competitive match. This mech would not be allowed to use. There are 3 repair charges, an extractor and an advanced repair kit. You can't get more Orb Lord than this. Now if I am low on health, all I have to do is look for orbs around me, meaning repair charges dropped by either other players or deceased mechs, and quickly boost dodge through them. If I manage to touch 2 or more, I should be almost fully healed. If there are none, I can deploy one myself. That's the way it goes. I think it's pretty obvious why this is considered overpowered, especially on C-class mechs that already take a long time to kill. I made this build in an attempt to make the Assault Rifle Infiltrator a bit more viable for me. I use it mostly on the bunker map and in co-op TDM as well as co-op bot destruction mode. Next up are my heat infiltrators. On this one I use blockades, which are very useful on Origin, Uptown, Facility and Wreckage to block corridors. Also I can dual assaults around blockades quite well. Orbs are always good, and you already know the internal setup for my scout. This one even looks a bit like a scout, and that's because I play the heat infiltrator in a similar way, only with additional invisibility. Shield dueling also kinda works, but with heat cannon and grenade launcher, a fail-safe is inevitable. And because I didn't want to part from the deflectors and fuel converter, I ditched the air compressor here, which is still a bit weird for me, but with the big fuel converter I'm getting by fine by moving a lot more on the ground and doing little jumps. Now, since we're already 15 minutes in, I'll cut the video here and see you next time with the second part of items and internals in Hawken. See you soon.